We need to break up that crowd over there.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the work session of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners to order. Stand for the pledge, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Here.
Commissioner Embry,
Here.
Commissioner Jazinski,
Present.
Commissioner Engler,
Here.
Commissioner Marino,
Here.
Commissioner Swaney,
Here.
Commissioner Hope,
Here.
Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Up next, we'll have the approval of the agenda. We'll start out with general public comment. Got a couple presentations and special reports. We have Operations Manager Brett Hansen from Mobile Medical Response with their annual report. And then we have Orienteering Land Navigation Course Project at Deerfield Nature Park. Eagle Scout Lucas DeMaria is going to give us a presentation. So we look forward to that. Next after that would be appointments to boards and commissions, and we'll consider extending Commissioner Jim Marino's term on the Mid-State Health Network. And then also appointing Tim Nieport to the Airport Joint Operations and Management Board. And then after that, committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Finance Administration Committee's all set, Mr. Chairman.
And Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
The Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
And Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Public Works Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Intergovernmental Affairs, Commissioner Marino, do we have any intergovernmental affairs?
Yes, I can give you a report on that at the time.
Excellent. We have no administrator controller issues, no unfinished business. Under new business, we're going to talk about doing a goal setting session. And then we'll have another opportunity for general public comment, announcements, and then we'll go into a closed session to consider purchase of real property. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Support. Moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we have an agenda. Also, I'd like to introduce our new deputy clerk, Leanne Ellis. Welcome.
Welcome.
And that brings us to general public comment. Anyone for general public comment? Anyone online, Michelle?
And David Steve. He's from RRS, the folks who perform the feasibility study.
Oh.
So he's actually going to talk at that point in the agenda.
Great. Okay, and there will be another opportunity for general public comment at the end of the meeting. So we'll move right on, presentations and special reports, and we have Brett Hansen from MMR.
I am Brett Hansen, Operations Manager of Mobile Medical Response here in Isabella County, here to do our annual update and report for you. So our service area still is 17 counties. We haven't added any or lost any, or nothing's changed there. We have about 120 ambulances in our fleet on the road currently, and have a staff of just over 600 individuals. And I promise I won't read these slides because it drives me crazy when people do that. But as I manage different counties, I like to point out what makes MMR different than a lot of other agencies. And one of the big ones is that MMR operates at no tax liability to the counties that we serve, meaning we don't get a subsidy like most other EMS agencies do. That's a big one I like to point out. All of the accreditations that we have maintained over the years, we still maintain. Every accreditation that an EMS agency can have, we have, from the EMS agency accreditation itself to all our dispatch center, our dispatchers, our fleet mechanics, our billers, and our educators. Any available accreditation that can be had, we hold. Our dispatch centers is what we refer to as MedCom. It's based in Saginaw. And one of the things I like to point out about what makes our center unique is when a 911 call comes into Isabella Central, and it's a request for an ambulance, that call is immediately transferred to an emergency call taker in Saginaw, who begins pre-arrival instructions. So if you have absolutely no idea what to do and you have a medical emergency or an injury in front of you, they will stay on the phone with you until the ambulance gets there and tell you exactly what to do the entire time, as well as trying to keep whoever the caller is calm. I kind of took for granted that occurred most everywhere, but surprisingly enough, it doesn't. And in talking with some community members in some other areas that I manage that have had to call 911, they really like the concept of somebody trained to stay on the phone with them and tell them what to do until the ambulance gets there. Staying on the phone with them. That's still for a lot of people. These are the clinical indicators and incident planning things that we always keep on the front of our radar. One of the most significant things I will say about Isabella County on this particular slide is, and I won't go into a lot of detail, but the planning that is driven by your local law enforcement agencies in Isabella County. I've managed, I think, 7 or 8 of our counties over the past 13 years. No other county does as good of a job as the law enforcement agencies here do. They were nice enough to invite us and involve us in some of that at the 1,000-foot level, but their work is very commendable. So I just thought you'd like to know what was going on behind the scenes a little bit there. Patient satisfaction, we continue to send out a survey to every patient that we transport. We've done that since 2007. We only get about 15% of those back. Most people throw it in the junk mail pile along with all the other flyers and things that they get in the mail. Isabella County for me is my highest scoring county. We're at about a little over 98% positive response from the patients that fill them out, which is always good to hear. Community partnership. I'll talk more about how many EMTs and MFRs and paramedics are graduated here in a minute, but a lot of the people that we put through our programs at our initial education site here in Mount Pleasant, we end up employing well over half of them. Creation of local jobs, and we also continue to do the MFR training for all the local fire departments. Over the past 3 years, we've gotten some questions about our special pathogens response team that we've had since the early 2000s. They still exist. They are still ready to deploy. Fortunately, in the past 3 years, we didn't have to deploy them anywhere. We were watching the pandemic as it rolled out early on, and we're kind of bracing for that request to come, but it never did. But they are still in place and stand ready should that need ever arise. And what that is, very briefly, is it's a special team of individuals who have all been properly trained and fitted with basically level 1 hazmat suits, the things you see on movies where, but some kind of toxic waste exposure, as well as containment systems in the ambulance. So if somebody, for say, had Ebola or something horrible like that. We could put that person in an ambulance that inside was completely contained and transport them to another facility without any risk to the public or the providers within the ambulance. So it's a very involved thing to do. This slide, I'm just going to leave in forever because I walked from the Towers parking lot all the way down to Broadway and Fancher or University or something, just to prove that I did it. It's kind of a legacy slide. I didn't want to take it out. So I'm kind of attached to it. Some of the other things that we do, you know, we're very visible in the community. We do a lot of coverage for sporting events, you know, everything from the CMU football stadium coverage to the county fair and any races or events that are happening in the community. We're always happy to come be involved with those. One very unique thing that we've started doing, and we deployed this in late September, early October, was through a partnership with My Michigan Health in the central region here locally. There was an optional state model protocol made available where when we encountered patients who had overdosed on opiates, we could leave behind this little kit that you see in the picture. And that kit contains 2 doses of a medication called Narcan, which is a reversal agent for opiate overdose. Equally, or even more importantly, there's also a big list of local resources for recovery that we provide to those people that we leave these kits with. And we can leave it with the patient themselves if they're alert and oriented and willing to accept it, or we can leave it with a family member or another person in the household. The goal there is obviously to prevent, you know, needless opiate deaths. We responded to 183 calls for overdose in the calendar year 2022. So I'm going to be watching that data over, you know, calendar year 23. Hopefully we'll see those go down. I don't know how much of an impact we'll have, but hopefully we'll have some, even if it's one, you know, we're going to call that a victory. So that's something that a lot of other counties aren't doing, but we thought that there'd be value in doing that here. So our primary education site, our classroom here in Mount Pleasant during 2022, medical first responders or emergency medical responders, as they're called now, those are your folks that are your volunteer firefighters that go on medical calls or car accidents, you know, leave their nice warm bed at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's -9 degrees outside like it was last week, out of the goodness of their hearts and come help. We graduated 23 of them, 65 EMTs and 8 paramedics. And I know that number sounds low, but in this day and age, that's actually a pretty good number. And we've employed all 8 of them, which is good news for us. We've also started doing a medical first responder to EMT option within our EMT class, where if there's a medical first responder on a local fire department who already holds that license, they can join the EMT class for a shorter duration and actually become licensed as an EMT if they want to upgrade their license, which is a good thing to offer. Put a picture of it's our winter 22 EMT class, all very excited and enthusiastic so far. That's one of our skills labs. Both of those young ladies now work for us here in Isabella County. We do a lot of vocational outreach with local high schools and even some junior high schools, where we'll be invited to a day where they have different vocational presentations. And they seem to enjoy doing that. And we don't capture a lot out of that, but current contract we renewed December of 2020. It's a 5-year contract. So December of 25, we'll be looking for a new one or updated one. Response times is the primary reporting parameter within that contract. And even though it says 2020 at the top of it, it's because I forgot to put 2022. These are calendar year 2022 times. Area A being Union Township in the city of Mount Pleasant, we were at 91%, and area B, which is the remainder of the county, we're at 90%. So the contract calls for 80 and a threshold of 80%. 10 minutes in area A, 15 area B. So we exceeded both those by at least 10%, which we thought was pretty good. Any questions?
It seems like a lot of employers are facing shortages of personnel. People leave. How's that impacting your operations?
we lost employees beginning in 2020 when the pandemic hit. We went from averaging around 60 calls every 24 hours within Isabella, Gratiot, and Clare, which is the division that comprises us, to around 20. So the call volume dropped super significantly because people were being told to stay home, stay safe, don't go to the hospital. And unfortunately, during that time, the state of Michigan went and did some data mining afterwards and realized that there was a 30% increase in out of hospital death, presumably from cardiac arrest secondary to a heart attack, things like that, things that people really should have went to the hospital for. They didn't. And a lot of healthcare workers left, a lot of them for a lot of different reasons. But over the past 6 months, we've seen a pretty significant increase in our staffing. And this month has been phenomenal. With the 8 new paramedics, I've got 6 new EMTs all starting this month. It's been a really good month, and the trend seems to be looking like it'll probably continue. So our staffing here is very, very good right now. I don't know. I don't know what's drawn people back to healthcare or towards, emergency medical. I can't figure it out. I hope it's not just dumb luck or a coincidence, but I don't know if people were inspired by the things they saw occurring during the pandemic response, or I think there's probably a lot of things that contribute to it.
You've got 91% beat that standard of 10 minutes for response time, but do you know what an average response time is? Do you have
So 10 minutes is for area A and 15 minutes is for area B.
okay?
And the way they're measured is it's a fractile report that I typically meet with the human or Health and Public Works. Commissioner Marino was on it, subcommittee. And that report that I bring them lays it out in a fractile manner. It's I could certainly share that with that group next time we come. It'll show you the fastest and the longest, basically.
Questions? Don't see any, but Mr. Hanson, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Have a good afternoon.
And next up, we have Eagle Scout Lucas DeMaria.
Before Lucas starts, I just want to introduce him to all of the commissioners and folks in the audience. Lucas DeMario has done a Eagle Scout project for us out at Deerfield Park, and he'll explain all of that. But I asked him to come the last day that we met and saw the remaining project. It was just so impressive. I just thought this would be an awesome presentation. It'll be about an hour long, and just 10 minutes. And he has his little bit. But anyway, so I just want to introduce him because we're so proud of his project that he did, and I won't take up any more of your time. Okay, he's here.
So my Eagle Scout project was to put in a orienteering / land navigation course into one of Isabella County's parks. And so for those of you who don't know, orienteering is basically just finding points on a map with either azimuths and a distance, or using something called an 8-digit grid. I don't really know how that one works. So it was done with help from my own scout troop, which is 604, and they came out and helped me with it. And also there was a lot of help from CMU's ROTC program as well as Isabella County Parks. So originally when I started thinking about it, I had to have basically a clientele that I was building it for who it would help and different ways to benefit the community. So the major ones was helping the general public, giving schools a different way of teaching azimuths, angles, and distance, as well as helping the ROTC programs because their closest place is like railing, and also my own scout troop. But I'm not allowed to say that one because it's not supposed to benefit us. And then this quote kind of sums up how I was at the very beginning of my project, because I was like, well, what should I do for it? And people would tell me, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. And I was like, how do I do? And they're like, well, you got to figure out what you want to do first. So that was fun. And then the basic planning steps was I would have to figure out where it would go, also how large the course should be, as well as what materials and supplies would be needed to make it not be too unobtrusive to wherever it went, as well as how I would fund it, because that's one of the main things that they want me to work on throughout the project, as well as making sure that the course is well mapped for people to be able to find information and be able to go out there on their own without having to be guided and shown the first time, as well as figuring out the coordination of different groups to help me install it. So the picture on your left is me writing some sponsor letters, and the picture on the right is an example of an orienteering course. So trying to figure out a course location, I actually started doing my Eagle project before COVID, and I was planning on Meridian Park. However, and I did get approval for it, but then COVID happened. And so I came back in this fall once things had finally fully settled down, and I went to Siouxan, and 2 days before ROTC had called her and were like, we want to renew and update this course from 2003. And I was like, well, I can put it in Deerfield if that works for you. So I got approval and kind of started a bit over again. So this was part of my trek through the woods trying to find the points that ROTC had from the 2000s. However, there wasn't any evidence except for some spare forest, and we actually had to change some of the map points because property had been bought or sold and changed hands. So one of it would have been going into somebody's front yard. One of it would have been in the middle of a trail that had been added since that point. This is one of the stakes that we use to mark out where each of the individual posts would be going. And the marking tape was so that people would know what number post was there, just to double check that the right post was at the right point. So then for my materials and supplies, it worked out to be 20 points, including a start post. So I had 8-foot long posts because they need to be sunk in 4 feet into the ground, as well as 4 2x4s as anchors, so people couldn't just pull them out. And I figured out that was overkill because the ones that they use is like half that size. And then also there was 25 post caps to be able to just make the posts last longer and look nicer as well. And I would also need different tools for digging and making sure that things were level, and also have people who are willing to walk around the woods with me and put in posts. So those were my 25 posts that I got, and on the right, it's me sealing them, so then they will also just last a bit longer and yeah, and last up to the weather. So I had to figure out fundraising, which was fun because the approximate cost was $500. And originally I started by going to places like Home Depot and Menards, and their managers at the store were like, we'll send it up to corporate and eventually they'll email you back. It's been like 3 months. Never heard anything from them. So then I had to figure out a different plan. And I thought of, instead of just trying to get it all wrapped up into one bundle, I could try and sell individual posts basically to different people. And in return, they would be able to have a little plaque that said whatever they wanted on the posts. And it went really well. I didn't get any rejections from anybody that I asked. So this is basically me giving a pitch at different points and an example of the letters that I gave to people. So then I had to go out and map everything. So it was a lot of walking, and each location, as I said before, was marked and staked for easier and making sure that everything was going where it's supposed to be. And then all the points had to be checked where they were in correlation with all the other points so that people could design their own courses if they wanted to, or adding to the database. That's another picture of me putting in another stake, and then that is the database for engineering courses. I had to get the park's approval and also make sure that the course location would not interfere with anything or any future plans. Then I had to plan an installment day for people to come and help me sort things out. And then the park staff was very nice and routed all of my posts so that I didn't have to get my third party, whatever. So that's one of the tractors that we had out there to make digging the holes a lot easier and saved us a lot of time because we had a whole day planned for the installation, but it took us just the morning, which was really nice. And those are the finished router posts. And the 5 is just to make it more organized and keep it neat on things. And then the letters are for the actual courses, so people can make courses that spell out the words. There we go. Like dog or cat or whatever it might be. So then we installed the course on December 3rd, which was the second day that we had planned because the first one it snowed for the first time of the year, which was fun. And I was a bit nervous at first because I'd sent out 2 major sign-up sheets, one to my troop and one to my church. One of them came back with no responses. The other came back with 8. But I ended up getting 40 people to show up, which was really good. And then over my Christmas break, I went out with my dad to install the final touches, which were the post caps and the sponsor signs, because they were the only really things that could get damaged while we were working on stuff. So these are various photos of people who showed up to come and help. Then I had to wrap up, which meant with meeting Sue Ann and Trent, who is from ROTC, to finalize a sign wording for the course, which will be put out right next to the start points. Then people, if they're just walking by, will be able to learn about it. So if people don't know about it, they can get educated and then be able to follow up on the website. And then also compile some language and videos to put onto the website to follow similar formats of things like disc golf that they had on their things, as well as hand over all the excess money that I had from my fundraising to the parks. So that was the last day, and me handing over the check, as well as one of the photos of a sponsor sign and a map. And again, a big thank you to Isabella County and specifically park staff. And these are some of the plaques that we had out there. And so some people just put like, this point is sponsored by whoever, or they had a nice little quote.
I have one of your slides reference points and azimuths. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that right, but
Yeah.
I've never heard that word before.
So a point is just kind of the post basically. And then an azimuth is basically just an angle. So from this post to this post, the azimuth would be 90 degrees. You just take your compass and then you'll have a distance of 100 meters. And there's a start post and a 25-meter post, and you walk it. And a lot of times people kind of off their left step. So if you do 10 steps and 25 meters, times it by 4, and that's 100. And so you walk that far at 90 degrees.
Nice.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you get those numbers and letters on the posts?
They were routed by the park.
Okay.
I imagine that big drill was easier than the post hole digger.
Some of them were also in a swamp, so
Yeah. Nice.
So you have a starting post to begin with, and then you have some options.
Yeah.
That are printed out for people to use. Is that?
it's also a website so people can make it. There's 19 posts that like have 4 and then a letter underneath to spell things. And then there's one start post and one 25-meter post for distance. And then there'll be 2 posts.
So they could go off in any number of different directions depending on which
Yeah.
one they
Farthest
select.
post is like 1.8 kilometers away from start. Then there's one that light hill in the way you could see.
Is there a prize at the end of the last post?
Oh,
Just satisfaction.
yeah.
Other questions? Well, Lucas, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yes, thank you for sharing your skills and your project with us.
When you put up, mention the notebook. And this is his notebook that he did, but we're gonna have a notebook at the gatehouse where people can get the answers to their thing or pick up a thing, and the sign says that you can pick that up at the gatehouse to start your adventure. And then on the website as well. But I don't want to embarrass him anymore, but he's incredible. I mean, this is incredible, you guys, of what he did from start to finish. And we're really impressed. So for that, you're going to get a hat.
Okay.
How about that? Thank you very much.
Okay. That was great. Next, we'll move on to appointments to boards and commissions. And Vice Chairman Jelazinski, would you present that item A for us?
Consider extending Commissioner Jim Marino's term on the Mid-State Health Network to August 31st, 2024. Well, I think Commissioner Marino's been serving on that now for what, 3 years?
No, I think it's two
2
years,
years?
ever since you left.
I know I was served on it before Commissioner Marino. And I was kind of surprised to see that we have a special action because I was always thinking that the
Yeah, me too.
chairman made the appointment and but apparently there's been some change in the rules, but I'm sure that Commissioner Marino is learning a lot about drugs and alcohol and tobacco, substance abuse issues and working with a great group of people to try to find some solutions. So
Yeah, they give us a list of acronyms because there's so many of them.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this year it's going to be very interesting with the opioid settlement coming down. Be very interesting to see some of the programs that already are and some of the solutions that we'll come up with.
I'm taking it that we could look to you for a lot of good suggestions on how we should appropriate that money.
Well, I know there's going to be a committee on that, but sure.
Yeah, good.
are there any other questions on the appointment? Then we'll move this to our meeting tonight.
Next one, item B is consider appointing Isabella County Community Development and Inspections Director Timothy Newport to serve as a member on the Airport Joint Operations and Management Board, and Isabella County Administrator Controller Nicole F. Frost as the alternate, effective immediately until December 31st, 2023. And what happened was when I made appointments to committees in January, I appointed Commissioner Embry to that committee, not knowing that the charter that committee states that elected officials cannot serve on that committee. So, oops, we have to kick Commissioner Embry off of that, and which means, right. But, thank you. Again, you folks agreed to. Just here. So with that, we'll move on to committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Item for the evening is consider ratifying and placing on file the January 13th, 2023 invoice list in the amount of $1,539,760.51. The January 20th, 2023 invoice list in the amount of $165,260. The January 27th, 2023 invoice list in the amount of $807,469.31. And the adjustment list dated February 2nd, 2023. The first invoice list is January 13th. That's the big dog on the porch. That's the big dollar amount. There's very few entries. And the reason for that is we're looking at the second quarter tax distribution, of which the one to Gratiot Isabella Immediate School District is over $900,000. So there's two community colleges, two intermediate school districts that make up the bulk of that. But there's also one that's TAC 10, $355,063.55. And that's for computer assisted dispatch software for central dispatch. Other than that, I think we probably have seen these before. Any questions on this first invoice list? Moving on then to the January 20th invoice list. Looks like we have about 7 entries. And again, it's the dollar amount isn't as big as the first 2-week period, but again, these are all ones that we should be very familiar with.
Yeah.
Are there any questions on?
Normal course of business.
Moving on then to the, it wasn't a question, was there? I heard something, but. Moving on to the January 27th invoice list. We have Clark Construction of $587,933.89. I guess that means the project is making some headway, getting ready for that gold shovel to hit the ground this spring. I'm not sure exactly what that's for. I know we had design work, this is probably site work and.
It is not actual mobilization or site work, but remember they had to order. We had to have those, our GMP with Clark decided on late last fall so that they could enter contracts with the subcontractors and get things ordered to get out in front of the supply chain issues. So a lot of this is getting out in front of and ordering some of those materials.
Okay. And then the rest of it, I think it's pretty self-explanatory unless you have questions on it. We'll move on to the next invoice list, and that was the last invoice list. We'll move on to the adjustment list dated February 2nd. And I think at the beginning of the year, we always see a lot of these corrections based on mileage, because the IRS changes it, and I think they change it by 2 or 3 cents this year, and it throws everybody off. So that goes in and we make these corrections. But again, we look down and we see Gordon Food Service, and pretty much Gordon Food Service, we're paying early to save, get an early discount. And there is one duplicate payment somehow got passed through and then caught. And removing some sales tax on a couple of them, but nothing earth shattering.
No.
Any questions on the adjustment list? Then we'll move this on to tonight's meeting for approval.
Item 2 on the Finance and Administration Committee is to consider approving the agreement addendum to the current affiliation agreement with Central Michigan University Board of Trustees through December 31st. 2026 to add the Isabella County Public Defender's Office to Exhibit B as an Isabella County Department's covered location, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. This was just a pretty straightforward addition, something that needed to be done that kind of got overlooked first time around. And I think that adding the Public Defender's Office to this is a great idea.
I have a question on that. I see, I'm reading here on the background that it's for internship programs by the CMU students. And I was just wondering, because there's no law school there, what would, they would be working in the public defender's office, but okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't have to necessarily be a law school student. But it could be a pre-law student.
Got it,
For
got it.
sure.
Okay, thanks.
Just, I like this part from the staff report. The county is very fortunate to be home of Central Michigan University. One of the many valuable benefits of having a major university in our community is the access to talented students. And it's certainly true. And we've had some of those talented students in admin, parks and rec, community development. So yeah, the university has been a great resource.
I think the Human Resources Committee too. I mean,
Human rights.
Human Rights Committee, yeah.
Mhm.
And the agreement does make it possible that if you want a employee relationship, you can offer a wage and some benefits. Otherwise, it's uncompensated and that can be covered by the contract. So everybody wins, student,
Win-win.
university, and
Yep.
the
All the way
county.
around. Any further questions? We'll move this on to our regular meeting tonight then.
Our last committee item is the American Rescue Plan Act funds discussion. So Administrator Controller Frost brought us a chart that kind of brought us up to date on what our balances are. Now, I think we have to commit these funds by, is it 2024 and spend them by that time?
Get them by December 1st of 2024 and spend them by December 31st of 2026. And I did just share that document with the screen, so at least the people in the audience can see that too.
So it's nice to know that in lost revenue, because we can take up to 10 million and we've spent some of it, but we still have a balance of $8,607,279 in lost revenue. And I have a little more to say on that in a minute. And then where we have the direct costs, we still have $2,442,912 to undertake. And I know the committee, there's been a committee meeting on that, and there are some ideas on how to use some of the funds. But on the 8.6 million, those are dollars that I know we talked about setting aside for the jail project. I mean, there's some other things that have come to light that we might use it for. And it'll be up to administration to kind of give us some recommendations on how best to use it, how best it's going to serve our budget with all these different projects in mind. But I know that we have the jail. We had a report from the drain commissioner on what's the fund, at-large fund that the county has a obligation for, and we're financing that. So that probably this year's budget, I think I heard we had like $300,000 in principal and interest.
Close, well, our county drain line assessment in the current year is approaching 400,000.
Okay, so it would be possible that we could use this to pay that off and then have that 400,000 to apply to the jail project in that manner. And I think the interest is what, 3 or more. So when you have the bond rate, 2.125 or whatever it is,
Right.
Might pay to look at that avenue.
Right.
And of
Save
course, we have MERS, and I think we kind of stepped back because we thought maybe we'd make a larger down payment, but MERS hasn't had a good investment year. But when the MERS personnel came and give us the what's the name of the report?
Annual valuation.
Annual evaluation report. They did say you want to invest in the market on the downside, not on the upside. So, there may be a possibility there, putting that money in and reducing our MERS, building that up. And so there's a lot of possibilities, and I'm sure Administrator Frost is going to be probably weighing those and probably coming with a recommendation in the near future. Are there any questions about the chart?
I'd like to talk just a little bit about what we still plan to do this year with the direct costs. So planned in the fiscal 23 budget, we've already spent, remember this board approved global essential pay. That was the $1,000 for full-time, $500 for part-time, who worked with us during the declared state of emergency. So that's already been spent this fiscal. We have, since the beginning of our ARPA dollars, funded the senior assistant prosecuting attorney position. So that's just what we spent thus far this year. We do plan to continue to fund that position with ARPA dollars. As you can see, that senior assistant PA position is over here in the fiscal 23 planned expenses, along with some other things that the ARPA work group approved moving forward, and this board approved in the 23 budget. Of great note, I think, is the Board of Commissioners and Room 320 audio visual upgrades. Budgeted 150,000 of ARPA dollars to do that. As we work on the RFP, some questions have come up regarding, and we look at Room 320, and it's bigger than Room 225, right? And we think about redoing the boardroom 225 because that's always been the boardroom, but the dais can be moved. 320 has more room, you know, it's going to be better for presentations and things. So I think how we'll probably do the RFP is set it up. So proposer, tell us the price to do all this in 320, tell us the price to do all this in 225, tell us the price to connect them, and then we'll kind of have an a la carte to look at, right? When we have the prices, then we'll be able to better decide, I think, what's the best way forward. Can we afford to upgrade both rooms and connect them? Does it make sense to just move forward with one? But I think price will help us figure that out. But I just kind of wanted to talk about that. So set the expectation when that RFP gets let. I think that's a good way to go about that. Other projects in here, I don't know how soon, but Coldwater Family Park Sewer Project was approved by the ARPA committee and this board up to 250,000. And then the treasurer brought forward a foreclosure prevention program, looking probably at $200,000 there. And then something we brought forward from last year's approved ARPA dollars, that the capital project that didn't happen was the Lake Isabella well rehab. This is of well number 2. And that was actually, I think, originally approved in the fiscal 21 budget with ARPA dollars back then. And the project just has not been able to happen. They came forward, the drain office did, with another proposal to rehab well number 1 at Lake Isabella. The ARPA committee did not further that request. We recently put out an RFP to do both wells 1 and 2, thinking maybe it would save some money, but it came back almost twice of what we had budgeted for it. So at this point, the drain office is going to move ahead with the rehab of well number 2 because that's what we can afford to do. They'll need the 32,000 from ARPA plus about 13,000 from the Lake Isabella water supply, which they do have. But well number 2 was the most critical one. So we're just going to go ahead and do that one. Well number 1, we'll have to wait and see. The balance of those direct costs are just over 2.4 million, purposefully leaving a large chunk in there for the HVAC project at the county administration building. If we can't find other means to afford that. And as Commissioner Jelesinski, Vice Chairman Jelesinski has mentioned, we do have a balance of lost revenue of just over 8.6 million. This is fantastic because this is that lost revenue standard allowance that we can spend on any general government operations. So the way we can do that current year, we've got a balanced budget, right, in 23, but we can say, let's recognize some or all of our lost revenue. And how we would do that is we would do a budget amendment. We'd bring ARPA dollars into the budget. We'd use that to pay payroll. And there's monies that we have budgeted we wouldn't use, right? That goes back in the fund balance and our fund balance increases. So this 8.6 of our lost revenue ARPA, we haven't even recognized it yet, right? It's sitting in a bank account, it's drawing some really nice interest for us. but it's sitting there until this board decides what to do. So mostly I wanted to bring this forward to give you comfort that what we're talking about, you can see it on paper and know it is still out there and available for your use.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for Administrator Nicole or on the chart?
I have a question on the senior assistant prosecuting attorney. And I remember that, when COVID hit us and it kind of shut the courts right down for a while, and then there was this huge backlog of cases that they had to catch up with. Is that why we funded that position? Dollars?
I feel like
There's some other reasoning for that. I'm kind of.
I feel like that was part of it, and just the needs for funds to balance the budget was the big reason. And that's why, that's why we used in fiscal 21, we used the lost revenue of just over $1 million to balance the budget, against payroll. We said we're going to bring in just over $1 million of ARPA in revenue because we couldn't find it anywhere else in the budget. Same reason for the assistant the senior assistant PA. You know what it's like at budget time. We'll be there real soon again. All those requests come in and you have to whittle that down. And so it's just available monies to help balance the budget really, but there was a tie because it's direct dollars. Well, there was some kind of a tie like that.
Does that mean then that once those funds are committed, that position will go away?
So based on,
Action on this board?
that is correct. So based on the budget resolution that you've adopted and this board adopts every year in conjunction with the budget, it says in that resolution that if we have a grant or outside funded position and that funding goes away, then yes, that position then goes away. Now, PA Barbary is very aware of that, and he is, communicated to me he'd like to see this position stay. He certainly has a need for it. So that is something we will consider. Only a couple more years could we spend ARPA dollars on that, and then we can't after 2026.
Could you remind me what the dollar amount for the HVAC, the last time we went out on bid? What are we looking at?
Right around $2 million. Mhm.
Okay, any other questions?
Other comment on the Board of Commission chambers, I like that thinking. We kind of thought we definitely need to redo the sound in the chambers. And then we thought we needed 320 as an overflow room, so we would have to do the sound in there. But if we just move the board up to 320, possibly we might not have to do sound in both rooms. So it's definitely something to look at. Might save us a little money there.
If we ever have another COVID type event, we have a room that's set up to where we can spread out and still be able to take. Yeah. Anticipatory thinking there, I like that.
Well, if there's nothing else, we'll move this item to tonight's meeting, and that will then complete the Finance and Administration Committee business for the work session.
Thank you, gentlemen. And that brings us to Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have one item. Consider approving Isabella County Sheriff's Office special duty position to be placed on the non-union employee wage scale as a pay grade 10 and adjust Special Deputy William Bailey's current pay accordingly to pay grade 10, step 1 year in the amount of 21 and effective immediately, and provide retroactive payment since January 1st, 2022. And we have Sheriff Main to explain the intricate details of this.
Will Bailey was brought in to do some security at the county building. He performed those duties. As things changed, we determined that that position wasn't necessarily needed anymore. We had an opening at Beal City Schools for a school resource officer. They'd gotten some 2% grant funding, so we transferred him over to that. Since then, Beal City has actually got a state of Michigan SRO grant. So probably that'll help even more dollars coming in for that program. Long story short, Will went from doing one assignment to another. This new assignment has much more workload, much more responsibility, much more risk, much more everything. So we were looking at his pay scale and quickly realized that we had missed poor Will along the way. Never got a raise, COLA, never got a step increase. So as we worked through that, this was the process using the non-union binding scale to get him to the right spot, to bring him up to the COLA raises and put him on a path that he'll get the raises as appropriate. Will's doing a good job there. I bothered him all weekend because we had a situation at Beal City that required some interaction. So, he's definitely doing more than he was previous assignments. So I would ask the board to consider this. I would ask the board to bring him up to the scale it needs to be at. I believe the administrator's office has been able to calculate what cost or are able to calculate a cost of catching him back up. I'd like to retro it back to when it was appropriate, his COLA increases and or step increases. So. And this money funding with the state of Michigan coming on board, we were paying a piece of this to dollars we had for open positions. But this new state of Michigan grant should probably pick up all of his wage. So really it will not cost the county anything. So when we are in the process of negotiating that agreement and that MOU, that'll come before the board here at some point soon.
We like those 4 words, not cost the county anything. And so it makes sense. I mean, this is the right thing to do for Deputy Bailey.
Yeah.
I do have the amount of the retro pay if you're interested in knowing that or announcing it. So this would go back to the January, as we talked in committee, January 1st of 2022, and presume that he was on a non-union 10 hire at that time, getting his COLA that year, then moving up to the 1-year step at his anniversary, getting the COLA at January of this year, just under $2,000, $1,951.05. Make it right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Commissioner.
Is this the first SRO officer you've had with the schools, or have you had him before? And
So
learning experience?
previously, when there was some funding through grants, many moons ago, there was a youth services unit operated that was the city PD kind of ran the program, but we had deputies in there along with the city officers and so forth. When them, so you mentioned earlier, when grant monies run out, so do those positions. So when that money ran out, we haven't had anybody back in the schools at all. We've talked about that many times, but again, we've got one on FLMA and I'm down 2 or 3 more positions. So it's hard to allocate somebody when you can't keep up on the road patrol activities, but this worked out well. Will's under what's called a special deputy assignment. That's why he doesn't fall under that binding contract for the union. That's a part of their contract that's in there. His only limitation is the types of crimes he can investigate. So if it's something major, we would, the deputies, and if it's major, the detectives are going to take it over anyways. So this is a good way to keep somebody there to build long-term rapport with the kids. So yes, to answer your question, this is the first time we've had somebody since I took office. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner?
I've got close contacts with out to Beal City and they're very happy with him. I mean, and back when I was on the board, we did have officers out there, not all the time, but out there. And it's a great program, especially for the younger kids coming up and see the officer there and just to have him around and answer questions. Solve some of the issues.
We've sent him to some trainings that are geared towards school resource officers. He's actually been in several classrooms doing some trainings and putting on some presentations for the kids, and he likes that part a lot. So, but you're right, that starting out, especially the younger ones, that's a huge connection to make. So I know my time at schools at Shepherd, those kids are still, they can reach out to me and they talk to me all the time. So it's kind of cool. So.
All right, no further questions. We'll move this on to the regular session tonight. Thank you, Sheriff May. And with that, we're all set on the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee. Chair Hope.
Thank you. Brings us down to Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Our first item is consider approving the editorial changes to the 2022 Isabella County Master Plan as adopted per resolution number PC 23-01 by the Isabella County Planning Commission on January 12th, 2023, in accordance with the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. We have Tim Neoport here.
Good afternoon. This is a change that came from the presentation I gave in December to the board with regard to the updated master plan. We had some inadvertent errors missing on page 44 under the localities for sanitary sewer and water supply systems throughout the county. We inadvertently left Union Township out, or I'm sorry, we inadvertently left the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe out of that. While the board met that day, they made an approval of the plan, seeking pending our legal counsel review. After the meeting, I went to legal counsel, spoke with them. We did find out we left out Union Township as well as the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe, inadvertently, the two biggest. In the conversation I had with Tim Perrone of corporate counsel, he advised that these are editorial changes and they did not require any further action, meaning public hearing by the Planning Commission. They just needed to go ahead and make the editorial change and do so through resolution. They did that. The additional recommendation from the attorney was that I bring it back to this board for approval of those editorial changes. So this basically takes and adds those two communities to the list on page 44.
Anybody have any questions or comments on that? So the Planning Commission did this.
Yeah, Planning Commission's taken their action and they've made the changes through resolution.
Okay, thank you. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to the next. We'll go to this tonight. We'll work on this tonight.
Thanks, Tim.
Our second item, consider establishing an ad hoc committee to review the material recovery facility feasibility study to determine the next step forward for the Isabel County Material Recovery Facility. And we have Jake here to.
Good evening. Or afternoon, however we want to look at it.
Oh, like 1 minute too.
Yeah. As you can see, I'm bringing forward our staff report. We have a completed feasibility study from RRS. And make it short and sweet. I'm going to turn this over to JD Lindenberg and David Steed from RRS to do a presentation for you, and then I will come back to my staff report. So.
He's on the Zoom. David's on the Zoom. He's muted.
Yeah, should I go ahead and start?
Jake, do you want to share the, Michelle, can you help Jake share the? Oh, Dave, okay, David already has it. Great.
Yes.
Yeah, got it for you.
Yep, we are all set, David. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I'm going to quickly go through a short presentation here to just get you, I think, I'm not sure if you got the full report yet, but to just brief you on the report and the evaluation of your materials recovery facility. Again, I'm David Stead, Vice President at Resource Recycling Systems. We've been around about 35 years, based in Ann Arbor, but we have work all over North America, Southeast Asia, and Europe. And JD Lindenberg, the president of the company, happens to be a resident of Mount Pleasant. And so he is in the room also, in case we need to ask him any really critical questions. So those are the two of us. So JD should be there. I'm not able to see who's in the audience. We're going to just quickly kind of go through the review, we reviewed your current system. We evaluated the MRF and we made some recommendations. I'll go through that. And we'll talk a little bit about collaboration and how to achieve some regional cooperation. And as part of that, I'll talk a little bit about at the end about new laws that were just adopted at the end of the last legislative session and signed by the governor that are related to solid waste and recycling in the state. So that's kind of what I'll run through today. So one of the things we always start with is kind of just looking at waste disposal, the collection, the recycling collection, and look at what's available. So we do what's called waste stream composition studies. And we actually have been working with the state of Michigan for the past 4 years, actually longer than that, doing an annual report and updating this kind of information on a regular basis. And what we see, and this is how we categorize it, is about 23%, and we call it single stream, but it's really 23% of what's being thrown out, which is in addition to the material you're currently collecting, is recoverable materials that we would typically want to run through a materials recovery facility, like paper, cardboard, plastic bottles, glass, things like that. 40% of what we're throwing away is compostable material. And so the state has adopted a target of 45% recovery. The state's currently at a rate of about 18%. And so the state is very interested in working with communities like yours to increase the amount of material that's through recovery and recycling. One of the other things we did then was just kind of look at the region and see what's going on. Your recycling facility is right around 4,000 tons per year. The one thing we're interested in is what else is in the region. And what you really have is down here at the bottom, there's a material recovery facility operated by Amterra in Lansing that just opened. And then the other closest one is in Traverse City. And that is just changing ownership right now. So both of those facilities are a pretty long distance in terms of hauling. And one of the things we always talk about is time on the road for trucks that are collecting material. And so that's a pretty long distance to go. That's probably a 2-hour round trip minimum to go either place. And so all of these counties around you, you're positioned very well to kind of take advantage of your location to perhaps provide some services on a regional basis in addition to your own tons. So I want to just give you that context that this is important, and particularly when you get to the end and talk about the new legislation and the new laws that are going into effect are directly related to regional cooperation. So kind of remember, that you are in a very interesting location right now with your facility in kind of central Michigan. So what we then did, we looked at all these surrounding communities and your community, and we said, what's the availability of tons that you could get? And, we look at both residential and commercial. And again, we think there's what we call fairly easy to get tonnage, meaning 17,000 tons from the surrounding region. One of the things that we often overlook is that over half of the waste stream and half of the material that's generated is from the commercial sector. Oftentimes we leave that to the commercial sector to manage that on its own, but it is an opportunity, particularly in your county, that you could look at programs that encourage or work with the commercial sector to bring in additional tons into your facility. And, there are communities that do things like, say, all commercial establishments have to recycle cardboard and plastic bottles in this. And again, they need a location to take those to get processed. That is, again, time on the road is a critical factor here. So again, even for the commercial sector, your facility is well located. And then what we did was kind of looked at what if those communities just recover an additional 25%. And I think, again, when I show you what the new state laws are that are going into effect over the next year, you're going to see that there's going to be a pretty large increase in material that's going to be recovered. And so we looked at this and said there's probably another 6,000 to 7,000 tons of material, just at 25% of it, that could be recovered in the region. And this leads us to kind of our what we did to kind of evaluate your facility and the amount of material that you would want to plan around. So you're currently doing about 4,100 tons. We think just from growth in the county, you're going to grow that by about 25% to 5,300 tons. We think if you look at some of this regional material where I said that 25%, you could easily see over the next several years, again, when we look at what's going to be required under the new state laws, up to 8,700 tons. So that's double what you're doing right now. And then, of course, if people got very aggressive, which they might under the new state laws, you could even get to 4 times what you're doing right now, which leads us to kind of our scenarios around what types of how we would upgrade or rebuild, and our recommendation on rebuilding your current facility. So this is kind of the tonnages that we're looking at. And the reason I put up tons per hour here is because the equipment that gets specified for material recovery facility is designed around a throughput in tons per hour. So equipment manufacturers basically say, how many tons per hour do you want this equipment to process? And so you can kind of see that in our mind, we're probably in the 5 to 10 ton per hour range. And you can certainly handle, the maximum high recovery with a 10 ton per hour facility. And so I'll show it. And so we evaluated both of those. In the report, we have much more detailed information on what these equipment lines and what our recommendations are in terms of the types of equipment. But again, we're looking at kind of our parameters about what our goals were here. And again, the throughput in tons per hour with the peak equipment, we're trying to address those concerns. Your equipment is pretty old right now, and we basically said you really can't, there's really not much more you can do with that equipment, and what you really need to do is reinvest and put new equipment into that facility. So and so part of what we're trying to do is look at effective capital investment into that. And one of the things I've noticed that I heard earlier, someone was asking about labor issues. One of the big problems that we're having in the waste industries and the recycling industries is labor right now. It's very hard. So when you operate a material recovery facility, a lot of them have been designed and are operating with a lot of labor right now. And it's becoming very difficult to keep that labor and pay them. And a lot of that just is a result of many things. COVID didn't help, and a lot of people discovered that they could go do other things, and they haven't come back into the market. And it's getting more expensive on the labor side, and it's just really hard to keep. If you can find them, it's really hard to keep labor. So one of the goals here is to reduce the dependency on labor. And I don't want to really call it an unreliable workforce, but it is just that it's hard to always keep workers. These are not great jobs in terms of the work environment. They're very tough jobs. And so if people find another job, they leave. And so you're always in that process of having to deal with a workforce that is looking elsewhere a lot of times. Jake has done a really good job, but again, this is a huge problem in the industry right now. And again, we want to have equipment in there that's easy to maintain. And one of the things that we really looked at in terms of the workforce and maintaining equipment is moving to automation. And there's two types of automation that are becoming very prevalent in this industry. And one is optical sorters that basically scan at very high speed. These things that work incredibly fast, scan material going down like a 4-foot wide conveyor belt, scan it with opticals and eject the material that they want to eject at very high rates. The other thing that is happening is we're getting a lot of robots that are learning equipment, artificial intelligence, that are very fast and can actually teach themselves. And so those are the two new technologies. Optical sorters have been around for a while, but the robots have really taken off now and are becoming very prevalent in this particular area. And so our recommendations are very much in the world of automating and putting in a lot of optical sorters and a lot of robots that replace workers. So again, you can look at the details with very specific detailed equipment lists. But we really looked at, and this was based on our discussions with equipment manufacturers, 7-ton-per-hour facility and a 10-ton-per-hour facility. And one of the things that we also looked at was your building, and we're recommending that you need to add 7,000 to 10,000 square feet of tipping space. Tipping floor is where the incoming trucks dump their loads on the floor. Right now, you have a very small floor, which really constrains you. You got to process material at a rate so that when a new truck comes in, it's not running out of the building. By increasing by increasing your tipping floor space, you're also going to allow for more storage at the front end, which will allow you to become more of a regional facility, because the trucks that come in from long distances are not your curbside trucks. They're big transfer trailers that they bring a lot of material at one time. So you need that space to be able to handle that kind of load coming in the front door. So again, we're looking at capital costs. You have the building. The only addition is for the 7,000 to 10,000 square foot tip floor addition. Not a yip floor, a tip floor. Sorry about that. And so we kind of built up the capital cost. Now, one of the things I will say right now is this is not only is it a interesting times in terms of what the state is doing to promote more recovery, but nationally there's a big move, and there's a lot of private equity capital and a lot of grant dollars that are out there that are looking to finance capital equipment upgrades of facilities like yours. I know of 3 facilities in Michigan right now that are in the process of that are not even in what I would say is in as good a position as you are, that have a lot of interest in terms of private equity that wants to come in with very low or no interest loans. And there's a lot of state grant money available for capital equipment also to help finance these things. And so it's, again, from a finance point of view, it's a very unique time and in a very interesting position in terms of wanting to recapitalize a facility like this. So again, one of the things I will say is these are estimates, these capital are estimates that are based on our conversations with equipment manufacturers. But again, these are not quoted prices through a bid process. And I would say that what's going on a lot of the supply chain, things are a little volatile. We inflated these prices a little bit because we just don't really know what will happen in a year in terms of where capital costs are going to go for equipment like this. So then we get to the other piece of this, which is didn't mean to jump ahead there, which is the regional cooperation that we think is a key part to at least meeting a mid-level size facility. And again, we'll talk about what the state is going to require in the future. But all of these things are to your benefit in terms of working regionally with 3 or 4 other counties. There are already counties along the the western part of Michigan along the coast that are all working together. The Tri-Counties area around Lansing are all working together. So this is a very typical approach. The NEMCOG, the northern Michigan counties are all working together. So I think this is the perfect time again for central Michigan counties to really look at cooperating and working together and, lowering the risk to all of you and getting the best value for your material and spreading the cost around among more players in your region. So again, we think this is a good component of what you need to be looking at over the next few years. And so getting to what the state has required in the new bills that passed and are now law, they're going to require that 90% of single family dwellings, basically that have more than 5,000 residents, have to have curbside recycling. And then in other places, there has to be a drop-off location for every 10,000 residents. So that's even going to be a requirement that will increase drop-off requirements within your county, but every county is going to be facing this requirement. And again, it's all directed at increasing the amount of recycling. And then the other big piece that will start, and you might have already gotten a preliminary letter from the state, but it will certainly be coming by probably the fourth quarter of this year, is that you're going to have to do a materials management plan. And you're going to have, you can see the timelines up here in terms of when that's going to have to be done. So starting at the end of this year and moving into next year is 6 months, you will have to do this. And one of the big efforts here is to try to, and you can see what happens with the state grants below, is that you're going to get more money if you work together with other counties to do these plans. So you'll get your base fee, but then you're going to get $10,000 for each county that has decided to work together. So you get 4 or 5 counties together, you'll get your $60,000 per county plus another $40,000, $50,000 for planning to develop your materials management plans. And again, the state is going to really have a huge emphasis on working together with other counties and other jurisdictions. They are very much want to see regionalization, particularly with facilities like yours. And again, this just emphasizes that your facility located where you are within those counties is a perfect location for a regional facility. And that is exactly what the state is going to be promoting and wants to see happen. So overall, we think you're in a good position. The state's going to be requiring you to work together. And we think the tonnages are going to be there, and you have a facility and it's just time to upgrade it, but probably to do that in cooperation with other counties. So that's kind of the quick look. We kind of look at 3 phases here. I don't want you, this is a lot. It's in the executive summary of the report. But again, I think over the next 6 months, we need to look at working to identify other local units of government, other counties that want to work together to do this with you. And starting that feasibility, and again, starting that planning process at the end of this year. Again, a lot of this takes lead time, and I would say, building a new facility is a 1.5 year long process. So when you think of this, even starting now, you won't be in a position to probably even break ground for a year and a half or 2 years. But you need to do all the work to put the partnerships together so that you can do this in the most cost-effective way and get the most material through this facility. So that's kind of that's our presentation, and we'd be glad to answer some quick questions. And I think, Jake will get back to what what his approach to this will be. So thank you.
Any questions for RRS?
I gotta ask one question. I know there's a ton of questions on there, but and I'm sure it's an engineering question, but when you go from a 7,000 tipping floor to a 10,000, the cost goes from what, $60 a square foot to 175 a square foot. And I guess I'm kind of, because the cost per ton at 10,000 is a lot, cheaper, but is that because you have to do extra spans in there? But that's quite a difference.
I'm not the engineer. JD may be able to answer that, and our engineer is actually not on the call.
Okay. I'm sure that's quite a bit of money difference in there. I was just curious why it went up so much. I'm sure it has to do with spans or why you couldn't do it with maybe two separate buildings, but that's the question. The only one I'm going to ask is because that one just bugs the heck out of me.
I can shed a little light on it.
Yeah.
I think that the smaller operation, smaller one considered one of those.
Fabric.
Who built fabric buildings?
Okay.
And as you get further out, that becomes more problematic. For a variety of reasons, including the fact that that football. So, start shoving a loader against walls, flexible.
Okay. I knew there was an answer, but it was just one of those ones that I was just wondering why the difference was that great. So, okay. That's all I have.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got, just thinking about, and maybe this is down the road, but the longevity of the automatic systems. Facility that if we go up, build this, bring things in. And one of those goes down. How much of a bind is that? I mean, I'm asking you something that you probably can't answer, but.
No, actually, I think I can give you a fairly reasonable answer on that. And it's all part of the material management plan. In that whole process of the material management, one of the things that we have to look to the future is that, okay, if we're going to have so many tons a day coming into this facility, I have to be able to look at, okay, if I'm down for a day or if I'm down for a week, I have to be able to move that material someplace. So it will be, whether it's contractual or, how it moves forward. But we'll do something another with the other surrounding MRFs in this state that they can or would be able to take that material from us for a period of downtime.
Yeah, and I would say that's very typical of all the MRFs. They all have relationships, and they all know that at certain times they have to transfer. And so you bring in big, large transfer trailers, and which is a good thing about having a bigger tip floor, is that it's a lot easier to bring in a transfer trailer to move stuff off site if you're down for a week or more than a week. I think one of the benefits of a bigger tip floor area too is that you can store material for much longer than you can store material right now. If you're down for a couple days, you might be able to still have 2 or 3 days of storage before you have to start moving it offsite.
Any other questions?
Just a question but that site is big enough to expand the building and the operation.
Yes.
Coming in and out. Okay.
Yeah. That was a good one. All right, I want to thank David and JD and Jake. for your information, and we'll move that forward to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is consider approving proposed pay ranges for Isabella County Parks and Recs seasonal part-time employees for the 2023 season. We have Sue Ann Kaufman, our Parks and Recreation Director, to give us background on, and
Our interim director, Miranda Walker.
Miranda. Got it.
I'm just kidding. Hey, everybody. We are first talking about the park seasonal employees. We'd like to, in the staff report, we went over recommending switch back to the old way that we used to do the seasonal employees before the wage study was completed. So just to summarize it pretty quick, I mean, it's kind of a longer report, but we really pushed to have our seasonal staff on the wage scale when the wage study was being done. Who knew what was going to happen, for the next 3 years? And we really, I mean, I know you guys see people all the time coming here, with wages, the competing wages that we have are not, we're not as competitive as some other areas, particularly for our seasonal employees. Those jobs have been just going up and up, as everyone knows, between $12 and $15 an hour just for entry level. That is a state of where we are right now. And we found that the wage study, the wage scale that we're on right now, where all the other employees are on for the season, the seasonal are on with everybody else. It is restricting for seasonal staff, and it's not meeting the competition that's out there. So there's a lot of attachments on here, but I'll just explain. I don't know if it's that confusing, but we used to do it where it was a wage scale. I'm sorry. Thank you. A range rather than a seasonal or wage scale. And the range allows us to hire people in it within that range. And then we have like a worksheet that is the last page of the attachments. It determines their education. It takes in their education, their skills, and and their experience. Thank you. I'm just a little tired today. Getting there to that. So by going back to the old system of the range, it helps us have that flexibility. So we will attract more seasonal people with experience. And it's really has worked for us over the years, but then we've got minimum wage kept going up, which was awesome for staff. But when we kind of reclassified, I don't know what with the wage study, we developed job descriptions that had different levels of a gate attendant and different like a level 1, 2, and 3, where 1 was an entry level. But we are requiring now our gate attendants to have very good computer skills with our online reservation system now. And we have found that a lot of certain gate attendants that we have also provide training to other gate attendants, which is more efficient than sending our staff out from our office out to the gates, because our parks are located throughout throughout the county. And we also found that the returning gate attendants are so valuable when they know the system, and it just has proven very successful. So it was very easy to write these 3 different levels of job descriptions. And that's what we developed with the wage study. But then unfortunately, the wage study that came back and the levels that we were classified in just was too low, because all of a sudden, as you know, during COVID and then beyond, just wages, $15 an hour was being advertised at Subway. I'll just simple as that. And we came to you asking for a motivation to have, rather than a quarter per hour for every hour a staff person worked, you guys were gracious enough to approve a 10% increase to their hourly staff or for every hour that they worked if they made it through Labor Day. And that proved very successful. So thank you very much. And that was a big change, a big fee. You know, a staff would make maybe $125, $150 if they worked full time between May and Labor Day. But if they stayed on with the 10%, they made $600 to $750. And that definitely, that was from Mecosta County. It proved very successful that for them, they have the competition with industry out there, Ice Mountain in particular, that's starting people out at 18 to 20 some dollars an hour. And that proved to be very successful for them. We can't meet their entry level for their staff, but we are finding ways best we can to do that. So looking at this with Miranda and our park supervisor, Kurt Bernia, you know, it was like, what about if we go backwards? We go back to the old way, because now the levels have gotten a little bit higher, but it allows us to, if we have the flexibility to pay somebody for their experience, they're more apt to apply if they know that ahead of time. And I guarantee they're more apt to apply. I can guarantee that for sure. Because we have people that have skills that we need now, from gate attendant to park rangers and groundskeepers, somebody that has welding, construction experience, mechanical. I mean, our equipment, you know, a mower may go down and we don't take it to a repair shop. I mean, our supervisors right now will go out and fix them. But we do have a few people on that have additional experience. And if you recall, you guys also helped us hire up to 5 year-round part-time staff. And our staff is very grateful. The staff that had been working with us, they now get PTO and 2 vacation days, and they're thrilled. I'm not gonna, won't mention who, but we even had a staff member who had tears in his eyes. He was so grateful that we cared enough about him that it was just very touching for the comments he came back to telling us. So that has proven very successful. But in this report, it also states, so we are still 6 to 10 people short during our season because people still quit, moved on, or it just didn't work out. But it was really surprising. Some people who really said they need the job and they love the 10% and they left. It was really surprising.
Well, and they were leaving for other positions that were paying higher too.
Yeah,
That's definitely
couple.
what we've seen last summer for sure.
Yeah, so we are now then in this report asking that we go back to the scale, the pay range, so that we have that flexibility, so we can advertise these are the ranges. And then when we do the worksheet at the end, that allows us to state that they are eligible for maybe because of their skill. And we do have a strong staff, not as many as we'd like, I guess, but people that are, semi-retired, that have a tremendous amount of skill. They just want to stay busy and work, but they want to make a better wage. That would be great. I think a great thing that we've decided that would be addition to our seasonal staffing. So if you look at the end, it's really, there's a lot of things here, but just on the first attachment where there's yellow at the bottom, that highlights the park ranger, manager 1, 2, 3, night ranger, all the numbers after, and gate attendants. Those are all based on the wage study and the job descriptions that were updated to accommodate these 3 levels. Up above just shows you starting in 2006. Really interesting is from 2006 to 2014. That's how long we had that wage range. If you remember, minimum wage didn't go up very much. It was at 7, wasn't it 7 something an hour? It stayed that way for a long time. And we would give staff a quarter increase each year, or if they returned, and that was it. But we still had the range that we could move up that, somebody that was maybe a first-year college student with minimal experience to somebody that had, 30 years at a machine shop and quite a few skills, that they could at least move up a little bit higher and not get the same wage. So from 2006 to 2020 is when we had that range. It's like the punchline over here. Thank you.
I did want to point out too, I pointed this out in the committee meeting as well. But if you go to the third row and you go to the last column, fiscal year 23, if we were to continue on with the county wage scale, I just wanted to show you that we have Park Ranger 1, 2, and 3. So their starting wages would be 1073, 1151, and 1233. So as Suan was saying, like a park ranger 3 for us would be somebody that has more experience and has maybe trains out at the park and, you know, somebody a little bit higher up. And so we would be starting that person at 1233, whereas we were looking at like the city of Mount Pleasant Parks and Rec Department, and they're starting a high school student out with no experience at 1250. So that just kind of gives you an example of where our wages are as far as the wage scale goes with our park rangers.
Anybody have any questions or comments on?
I was watching, you know, we get the report on personnel. And I see the turnover. And I feel for what Suan and the staff have to go through, because these people are needed out there for the, not only for the service of the public that comes in the parks, but for the safety. And when you can't put warm bodies in positions, that makes it really, really difficult. I'm sure there's a lot of sleepless nights by the people that have to ensure that people are there. So I applaud you for coming forward and trying to find a solution. I know it's going to cost more, but you know, it's the age that we're living in. We just don't have people that are willing to work for substandard wages.
So Commissioner Jazinski, that's a really great comment, because this past year, we were just talking about it today. I mean, we had staff deal with so many things different than what they have in the past. I mean, there's a lot of things we deal with, and, you know, we have the support of our law enforcement. He's still here. Thank you. We call him almost every weekend. I mean, a number of calls. But in just talking to staff, it wears on them. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just a different world now. And we're asking a lot of people, you know what I mean, we have a lot of people that are displaced. So they need the campground to be there, which is fine. It's great. But I even had, you know, one staff just very much affected by what people don't have, and they're serving them, and they feel very strongly for that. And that was, I mean, I was sharing that with Miranda just because it's just a different time that people are there. And it just really will, to be at least a little bit more competitive, will definitely help ease having lack of a full staff. You know what I mean? That's because you're out there. Normally 3 people should be on staff, maintenance staff at Herrick, and we just have 1 and maybe a little overlap with 2. And it's just, Herrick was really our challenge this year, you know, for sure, with staffing. So that's why we're here. And I don't know if you have any questions. It's a lot of information, but it's just going back to an old way with a little bit higher level of pay. And it was mentioned that this does follow the wage scale, except we did in the line item for the gate attendant, park ranger, and night ranger, groundskeeper, darn it. And the groundskeeper was to ask that they move up at the top of the range, the level 3s, just a little bit higher, so that we are more competitive, because we're asking those people to be more like supervisors, which is going to be very helpful with the way we're set up now, because we're not asking to add any more full-time staff, but it will just pressure on our staff as well.
I'd just like to thank you, Miranda and Suan, for being creative and coming up with a solution and sensitive to your staff. So there's no more questions.
Just one thing, I think with the new computer system, as far as applying that in place, that'll help. And then with this, that should help too. I mean, hopefully we don't have the problem at the end of the year.
Thank you for that comment too.
Anybody else have any comments or questions at this point? Seeing or hearing none, we'll put this on the agenda for this evening. Thank you so much.
Okay, and our last item, consider approving the temporary right-of-way easement between William D. Whitehead and Nancy J. Whitehead and the Isabel County effective February 7th, 2023 and July 31st, 2023, and authorize board chair to sign this thing.
This is simply a continuation of, so it's a third extension, and this will go till July 31st, 2023. The owner asked that it just go till July because we're hoping that we will have a conclusion or decision. Thank you. Do not leave me. Anyway, so that's what this is. It's the exact same agreement that we've had before. It's just those dates have been added.
Other questions? Okay, with that being said, we'll move that forward to the regular meeting.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Sue Ann and Miranda. And that brings us to intergovernmental affairs. Commissioner Marino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The intergovernmental liaison meeting was January 25th at 9 a.m. on Zoom. Present was Tobin Hope, Amy Perschbacher, Nicole Frost, Eric Rodriguez, James Marino, Brian Milkey, Aaron DeSense, Mark Stollenderer, City Manager. Okay, that's who was here. And the first thing is City Manager Aaron DeSense went over the Mount Pleasant's 2023 goals and objectives. First thing he pointed out was that there's $300,000 more than the city expected at this time. And as a result, they have 18 bids out for work to be conducted in the next year. Unfortunately, the costs have gone up, as we have experienced, from 25 to 30% on materials and workers. So some of the items scheduled are $1 million pedestrian bridge over Chippewa River and a city hall retaining wall. And that was a couple of the projects. The goals and objectives are as follows: reconstruction of the city center, $750 million redo of the parking lot and civic spaces. Long-term, a look at how to keep Parks and Recreation Department sustainable in the long term. Another goal is to ensure the long-term sustainability of PEAT, the school program that the city does. Preschool. Be more aware and prepared. Another goal is be more aware and prepared for IT scams. And the city manager mentioned a program that they are using to learn how to avoid IT scams. We all know this is a growing problem for all governments in our area and state. Also, they plan to meet with the city and CMU liaison committee. And the manager pointed out that Parks and Recreation interests change all the time, and that now pickleball is a really big thing. I think we knew that. Okay, next from our Controller Administrator Nicole Frost, we got an update on the Isabella Sheriff Office and Correctional Facility. Shovels in the ground are scheduled to start around late March, if not sooner, depending on the weather. And the completion is scheduled to be December 5th, 2024. And there have been some discussions on the fate of the old jail building. Initially, the plan was to demolish it, but now that has changed and it could possibly be used for a juvenile detention facility. And perhaps a 2% grant from the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe could help with this. So we're relooking, we're assessing what's going to be the fate of the jail we have now with the changes that we've noticed. Next, on the Isabella, and you heard some of this tonight, regarding the Isabella County Material Recovery Facility, the feasibility study is done. There was cooperation with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe to switch the use of truck funding to fund the feasibility study. And it was noted that single stream is the way today of recycling. We saw that in the report we got earlier. We will invest going forward going for a regional approach. It is to be a hub and spoke recycling model involving memorandums of understanding with surrounding communities, And the tribe has said funding is available through the EPA for collaboration on this effort. On the other matter, the sustainability group, which Marie Coper is in, will survey community interest. Okay, Mark of Union Township and Aaron of the city and Nicole of the county. I think this is really important. Periodically meet with other managers and administrators in the region. And it's especially of value if regionalization of the MRF, which was discussed, is a thing that we're going to be doing. It's a really good way to reach out to those communities like Midland, Gladwin, Clare, and start broaching the subject. And it was noted that the sooner we get on this, the better, because it's going to be a long process. And the group meets at the Brass in Mount Pleasant. Okay, Mark also gave us an update on the Michigan Aquatic Center Recreation Authority. This group meets every month. John Wang is the head of the project, and members are Township of Union, City of Mount Pleasant school districts. And at this time, the group is exploring land acquisition for the project. Initially, the plan of the group was for a 2023 millage vote, but now the vote for the millage will be in 2024. The group has secured service of an architectural firm. That's one thing. The next thing is the group is required to have an audit of their efforts. In 2022, $25,000 to $30,000 has been spent. The audits themselves cost $10,000. So the group will be seeking a pass on the 2022 audit, but there will definitely be an audit for 2023. And in February or March, there will be a report given to the county, city, school district, and Union Township on this, on the progress of this effort. And like I said before, they will go to vote on the millage in 2024, which will be a live or die vote. If they don't get the vote passed, that's going to be the end. So let's hope that does pass. Another report was from Brian Milkey about the fitness equipment for McDonald Park in Union Township. It's going to be installed the spring of 2023. And Union Township will be partnering with Art Week to create art for the space. There will be 7 types of workout areas, including resistance equipment, stair steps. The equipment handles Michigan weather as well. Eric Rodriguez of the tribe let us know that the tribe will be getting $23.5 million for recreational services in the fall of 2024 for the K-12 Tribal Academy, and there will be basket courts west of Shepherd Road. Also, there will be updates to the wastewater and water treatment plants. And U.S. Rep. John Molinar will visit regarding funding for these plants. The tribe will be getting a new steakhouse, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And Eric also let us know that the 2% roundtable will be held once again shortly. There will be a new way of doing the 2% requests, and it will be opening from February 1st to March the 1st. Brian Milkey told us the city has extended, for the last item, the Mid-Michigan non-motorized pathway to Mission Creek. The city, Union Township, and Shepherd are searching for sources of funding to complete the project. Union Township adopted a resolution to apply for a TAP grant from the Michigan Department of Transportation to fund the Mid-Michigan GKB Pathway North Connector project. And our next meeting will be May 24th. There was lots of stuff going on.
Yes, there
If
was.
you either have any things I missed or anything you want to?
I don't think you missed anything. I don't have anything to add. Ms. Frost, do you have anything?
No, I was there and I just learned some things. So I think I meant, thank you, Commissioner. I think I missed some things.
That's the report.
We don't have any administrator controller issues, no unfinished business. Under new business, we're going to talk about goal setting session. And we did that last year. We all got together out at the public defender's office and talked about where we want to go. And I thought it was a very helpful, very good practice for us to do. And we want to do it again. And Nicole and I have tossed a few dates around later in March.
Remember what those dates are?
I don't. I
We
wrote it down
crossed it.
somewhere, but
They were both Thursdays. March 16th and March 23rd, we had in mind, maybe a late afternoon or early evening. We're wondering availability of commissioners. Preference.
23rd.
Mhm. We settle on a date and time, then next meeting, we add it to the agenda to set the meeting and we'll know a location then.
The 23rd not work for anybody?
You're good for me.
Clerk Lux? Perfect. That was easier than we thought it would be.
It
Chairman.
was, yeah.
You want to think about a time?
Yeah, you know, for me, late afternoon, early evening.
What's the date? 23rd?
23rd.
March 23rd. Do we want to start like at 4 o'clock, like our work session time?
Sure.
That way we're out at a decent time for everyone to go have their evening meal if they would like. We're not starting at 5 and push until 7 or 8 then. Maybe 4 p.m. Okay, we'll put that on your agenda for next meeting to set that date. Do you have preference of location? Want to do here if it's available? Okay. Okay. I'll look at availability. We don't have to, it's not a
we didn't do it
requirement.
Last time, did we?
I don't,
So, no.
public defender.
defender.
office. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, but I know Ms. Frost and her staff have been working hard to kind of finalize some.
yes. Yeah, and the forecast will actually come through Finance Committee in the next round of meetings when we bring the first quarterly report forward. So hopefully from that discussion, you guys will really help. And I mean, you guys too will really tear that forecast apart and make it as tight as it can be. Don't sit back and think, gosh, did they think of this? Let's talk about it, get it in that, built into that forecast. It's gonna be a very valuable tool for us. So I think feedback from a couple weeks from now, we'll have a really tight forecast come end of March.
I don't know how you'd like to handle this, but I guess I'd like to see maybe a rough draft of agenda, or so I can make suggestions if there's something that I'd like to see floated. As opposed to just seeing a final agenda before the meeting.
Like a week, I'd like a week.
Yeah, so 2 weeks out would be, and or 10 days, something.
Okay.
For those of us that have several townships that we represent, it'd be nice to be able to take an agenda to them as well. And see what input they might have to add.
Great idea. Great idea. So if you're thinking of items for that agenda, let's just start an email, right? Just shoot it out to me and I can add in everybody or include everybody and we can start to build on that list. I've certainly got some ideas in mind that we want to show you, so include.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll get that on here. So it won't be on tonight's. We'll put it on in 2 weeks when we know the location.
Nothing more on that. We'll move along to, where are we? General public comment. Anyone for general public comment? Okay. Announcements, commissioners, you have any announcements? Commissioner Jelazinski.
I'll keep it short because I know we're going getting late, but I did go to the Northern Michigan Counties Association meeting yesterday and Mac was present. They were basically talking about their legislative goals, which if I reel them off, there's like 6, 7 of them that we identify with real easy, but I'm not going to get into them. I got up on my soapbox. You've seen me get up my soapbox here in front of this group. But they were talking about 17-year-olds as one of the goals that the state needs to fund the counties to provide the services to these 17-year-olds that used to go in the adult prison system, but now that we have to provide some services locally. And there was a lot of discussion, and they had 2 or 3 staff members of senators and representatives present. Well, after the discussion calmed down, I got up my soapbox and I just said, this is something that the state legislature and the governor needs to address immediately. I mean, I was in a meeting just last week, I think it was the opioid funding, and we kind of diverted into a discussion about the youth and providing services, and we had the courts present, we had the sheriff present, we had community mental health, and we get young people that don't have, they need a bed, they need to go to a facility, and there's just not a bed, a treatment facility for them. And so they're falling through the cracks. And that has to, I mean, it's going to cost the state down the line. It's going to cost the counties down the line. This is something that we can't drag out for 2 or 3 years while some kind of a political process takes place. So I did get up on my soapbox and make a very pointed point that we need to take some action. And I guess the state may be looking at doing something in terms of funding for some regional type of facilities. So as we look at the jail, there may be some funding, and Sheriff, you got a really golden tongue. Maybe you can meet with some of our legislators and make sure that they're aware that we have a building.
Golden tongue sheriff.
But just this week, we have a 17-year-old that's ready for commitment, who is an adult, turns 18 in a couple months. Immediately puts us in violation of federal law and PREA, which is the First Elimination Act. We just can't do it, period. I mean, so they either have to find someplace, which would be more than likely out of state, which costs lots of dollars. We already spend lots of dollars for that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not uncommon. Every day we have juvenile issues, and we come back. We have a group home in our community that's raising all kinds of havoc right now that we're dealing with, and we were there multiple times over the weekend with the deputies in there and along with city officers helping them, and fights breaking out right in front of them. And we just have to take them to their bedrooms because there's no place to take them, period. So it's a huge issue. One that a few people I think saw coming and other people didn't, so. Pick up the Mac.
The other comment I want to make is I want to thank Sue Ann Kopmeyer. I know she's retiring. And I don't know when her last day is, but she's been when today.
Oh.
You know, I thought I had 13 years with the county in the parks and that would never be beaten, but I found out she had 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Remarkable career spent really with the county, and has done a good job. And I know I've worked with her on some projects for Fremont Township and others. So thank you, Sue Ann.
Any other announcements? Commissioner Angler.
Yeah, just real quick, I want to remind everybody that the Conservation District order forms are up, thanks to my administrator reminding me to get that out. I didn't know they were out yet, but you can either go to the Conservation District Facebook page, or you can go to the website at isabellaconservationdistrict.org. That's all one word, and the order forms will be, I think, in the buyer's guide. I think they do one time in the paper, and also they'll be available at the office. So,
I turned mine in today and told them that you told me to.
okay, there we go.
Got brownie points.
Any other announcements? Okay, I just have one, community mental health met last week, dealing with a lot of the issues that, Vice Chairman Jelezinski brought up, youth with severe mental health problems and nowhere to place them. So they're dealing with that too. One of the things coming up is the Medicaid enrollment. When COVID hit, the COVID order, and I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but anyone that was enrolled in Medicaid didn't have to re-enroll. That ends this year. That ends in March. So we don't know what effect that is going to have. Their funding in large part is based on Medicaid enrollment. I mean, there's a complicated formula, but it's mainly based on Medicaid enrollment. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen in March when people are going to be required to re-enroll when they haven't had to in the last few years. So that'll be interesting. I do have a fact sheet on community mental health, and just a lot of little facts and figures on what our 6-county mental health system does. It's really quite remarkable. And there's still rumblings of maybe not privatization, but reorganization. And I just want to make sure that we always advocate for that local control of our public community mental health system. And just to give you an idea, people served in our 6-county area, we serve 45,000 people annually with intellectual and developmental disabilities. 189,000 adults with mental illness, 45,000 children with emotional disturbances, and 70,000 people served with substance use disorders. So really phenomenal amount of people served by our community mental health system. So there's a little handout I have here if anybody wants one. And that is all I had. Commissioner Hutchinson.
Well, it's funny how you get into this job and and I'm on that board. It's amazing how much I've learned on that board, community mental health, and all the issues that go with that. It's a good board to be on, and it's a wonderful job for 6 counties, and it is nice that we're the central part of it.
Mr. Engler.
Yes, I forgot to mention that anybody interested in fruit trees, there will be a workshop April 1st. It'll be in Clare, but you can register at the Conservation District. So it's a free workshop. So I know I get a lot of questions about fruit trees and how to deal them. So if anybody's interested in that, the county is hosting that. So.
The other thing I wanted to mention, I will talk about the MRF ad hoc committee more in the regular session. So I do have some ideas for that. I'll run past this in the regular session. Anything else before we move on? So at this time, I would entertain a motion to enter into a closed session under Section 8D of the Open Meetings Act to consider the purchase of real property.
I will move that we enter in a closed session under Section 8D of the Open Meetings Act to consider the purchase of real property.
Support.
Supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Marino.
I know.
Where am I?
You bring us back into the other. It doesn't. Oh, it's.
Okay, there we are.
We're back in main session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Marino. Aye. Can we take a little break?